Humdrummity, humdrummity, humdrummity.
Hey, listener, welcome back. I'm continuing my series on travel, and today I've got a twofer for you. My first guest is Doug Brouwer, author and man of the cloth, whose travels have taken him in pursuit of spiritual and communal enlightenment. My second guest is Kerry Damiano, YouTuber and solo travel influencer, whose wanderlust is a hereditary trait. Tune in and find out the one thing you should never declare in an airport. Okay, let's start our listening journey. Hi, Doug, and thank you for joining me today on Humdrummity. How are you doing?
It is good to be with you, Graham. Good to meet you.
Yeah, you as well. Now, before we get started, where in the world do we find you today?
I live in West Michigan, just a few steps from Lake Michigan.
It's interesting asking you about where you live now because you focus a lot on travel. So you like to be other places. Now, I'm sure I know home is where the heart is. But before I contacted you for this interview, you are about to head out to do a book tour. And you are the author of 8 books. And your latest book is The Traveler's Path, Finding Spiritual Growth and Inspiration Through Travel. So what is your book about specifically, and why should we read it?
You know, I should say right up front that sometimes a vacation is just a vacation. And I need them as much as some people. I need to go to the lake, put my toes in the sand and read a book. So that's one kind of travel, and that's not what the book is about. The book is about how travel can be deeper and far more life-changing than it often is. So sometimes we can set out and be intentional about it and have amazing experiences. I grew up in West Michigan, as I said, but then I lived away for more than 40 years, including 3 times in Europe, and I've had lots of experiences with pilgrimages, mission trips, study tours, you name it. And when I came to the end of all of that, or what felt like the end, I decided to reflect deeply about it, and that deep reflection produced the book.
So, just for our listeners' knowledge, you are a Presbyterian pastor, correct? And you have served in such international places as Zurich, Lucerne, and even at The Hague. What inspired you to go to these places to serve as a pastor in European countries?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a very honest answer here. I served a number of churches in the U.S., and I reached a point in my life, I was in my 50s, where I became just tired of the fighting. And we don't have to go into the issues of what churches fight about these days, but you can certainly guess. And someone said, "Have you ever thought about serving a church internationally?" And without hesitating for a second, I said, "Yes, I would love to think about that." So that led to my time in Zurich, Switzerland, of all places. I'm not a native German speaker by any stretch of the imagination, but I had the opportunity to serve an international church there. So on any given Sunday morning, we had people from 12 different countries, language groups. It was it was a mind-bogglingly diverse congregation, and as it turns out, that's exactly what I needed. It was just wonderful.
And why do you say that?
Um, well, for one thing, it was a change of pace. I mean, that's most obvious. But I grew up with a sense of curiosity. My parents, from an early age, gave me this gift of curiosity. And I was serving churches in the U.S. where I looked like the people I was serving. I sort of knew how they thought about things. I mean, in some ways, we were well matched. But then having this experience in an international setting was mind blowing. All those speech patterns I could count on, from long ago, no longer worked. I had to work very, very hard to understand people from other cultures, and I mean, it was exhausting on one hand, but it was also exhilarating.
Well, and how did that affect you as being a pastor to these people?
Interestingly, Switzerland has 4 official languages, and Swiss German is not one of them. We did live in the German-speaking part of the country, and I was required for my work permit to learn standard German.
Hmm.
But everybody around me spoke Swiss German, so I had to be very intentional about learning. In fact, I spent a month at a language school in Berlin just to get the, I'm not sure you can call it pure German, but just so that I could hear what I was required to know.
Right. And so what would you give your sermons
Oh, it was
in
an
German?
English-speaking church.
Oh, it was an English speaking church. Okay.
Yes. Uh, well, here's something I learned. English has become an international language. The universities in Zurich offered almost all their classes in English. English is the language of international business. So all the people who came to my church, even though they were from a couple of dozen different countries, all spoke English, not native speakers, but mostly they were very good English speakers.
Hmm. And being a pastor in a different country, what did you learn as opposed to being a pastor in the US?
Well, I mean, much of my work was very similar, and for that I'm grateful. But I did, as I said, I did have to work extra hard to understand people who come from different cultures. Being a Christian believer in the U.S., coming to faith in the U.S. is far different from coming to faith in, say, an African culture, an Asian culture. And so, I mean, one of the things I learned early on was that global Christians tend to be far more conservative than American Christians. And sometimes that was good, and other times not so good. And I would love to give you an illustration of this because I'm a Presbyterian. I'd never baptized anyone by immersion. I mean, I sprinkle babies. But there was a young woman from Africa who had come to faith in her, I don't know, early 20s, and she wanted to wade out into Lake Zurich and have a full immersion baptism. And I thought, okay, I claim to be open to new experiences, so let's do this. And then here's the funny part of the story. I had to watch a couple of YouTube videos to figure out how to figure out how other pastors do that. And in the end, I think it was wonderful. But I certainly didn't know what in the world I was doing.
Right. So no drowning incidents.
No, she seemed very pleased, and I was pleased.
So in regards then to your spiritualism as being a pastor, how has that influenced your travel insofar as the destinations you've picked and the experiences that you look to gain through your travel?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think that it gets to the heart of what I wanted to think about when I sat down to write the book. Uh, from an early age, when my parents took me on these long road trips around the U.S., I think one of the first things I learned was wonder and awe. I wish I could say I learned that in church. I didn't, but pulling up to a scenic overlook in Arizona to see the Grand Canyon for the first time was overwhelming. And so I would say I was 10 years old or so. I think I figured out what awe and wonder meant. Uh, but that continued to grow. That my curiosity continued to grow beyond, I don't know, interesting landscapes to other cultures, getting to know people from other cultures. And I think it's foundational to my faith, by the way, that we welcome the stranger. We want to acknowledge the presence of the stranger, get to know them. We can talk about speaking their language later if you want. So, I mean, that was the trajectory of my growth as a traveler. I wanted to understand the cultures I visited, and then I wanted to make friends in other places, and I wanted to understand how people from those other places thought about things. And as it turns out, they thought about things much differently than I did.
And what were some of the lessons or experiences that you took away from those meetings?
Oh, thank you for asking this. There's one story I'd love to tell. The first time I went to Israel, I was leading a group of people, and I had no knowledge of Arab Christians. I mean, they've been living in the land since the beginning of Christianity. and they make up only about 5% of the population in Israel, but I knew no one who was an Arab Christian. So we went out of our way on that trip to meet a Arab Christian pastor who, as it turns out, is a recognized peacemaker in Israel. He's been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize 3 times, and he started a school that would bring Jews and Christians and Muslims together. And he has this vision for how people can get along with each other well. Meeting him for the first time, I have to say, was life-changing. It was he gave me a different way to think about my work. I discovered that there isn't just one story in Israel. There aren't just two stories in Israel. There are several competing stories for what this part of the world can be and should be. So I've been a guest in his home many times on subsequent trips there. He's been a guest in my home in the U.S. But I now know someone from Israel. He's now a friend, and we share the work of ministry together. I mean, nothing makes me more excited than to be able to say that.
And did you take anything away that you've incorporated into any of your sermons from what you learned from this man?
You know, his courage was one of the things that struck me early on. And I had to say, I calibrate my words very carefully when I speak to an American congregation. And here was a man, a fellow pastor who was fearless.
Mm.
And if his words landed him in prison, so what? He was willing to speak the truth. And I had never, I mean, Presbyterians are, we're get along people. Yeah, we're good Rotarians, for example. To meet a person with this much courage, I have to say, made me think deeply about how I approach ministry.
And what would Arab Christianity, what would be, say, the differences between that and Presbyterianism?
You know, most of the Arab Christians are in the Orthodox tradition, and they've been Orthodox since, well, I guess since the beginning of the church. And so when you encounter an Arab Christian, you see long cassocks on the clergy, you see a beard, pectoral crosses. The worship tends to be very liturgical. And so when American Christians go to Israel, they tend not to know what to make of this style of Christian faith. But I have made it a point to introduce American Christians to not just Father Shakur, but his well, worshiping congregation there. And so, I mean, so what if it's different? We try to enter into it and understand the history of it. I think it's been very, very important.
Now, it's interesting that you talk about the people that you meet on your travels being very
Yes.
important to you, but at the same time, you did a trip where you did solo walking in the communal paths in Spain. So, what inspired that decision, and what can people learn from solo travel?
You know, leading groups, pilgrimage groups to places like Israel is exhausting. I was not only the pastor to this group of people, but I was a host, and I sometimes had to navigate their medical care if one of them became sick abroad. And so it was no vacation, believe me. I'd come back from these outings uh, quite tired. So at a certain point in my life, I thought, I'm going to try this by myself, where I have an opportunity to grow and think and reflect on what's going on. And a seminary classmate told me about the Camino de Santiago. There are a variety of paths in Spain and Portugal. They all lead to university town in northwest Spain, where the remains of Saint James the Apostle are supposedly interred. It makes no difference to me whether there's a famous person buried there or not. But these pilgrimage paths have become places where people from all over the world can again come together and get to know each other. So one more thing about that, the highlight of this walking for me has been getting to know people from so many other places around the world, every continent around the world. So we walk together and we talk, and I discover what motivates them to take this walk, and maybe they discover what motivates me.
Right. So you went on this solo walk with the intention of meeting people. It wasn't like you were going through some monastic, vow of silence where you were, just going to be with yourself and with your thoughts.
I had no idea what to expect, Graham. I have a friend who told me about it, but I think everyone has a different kind of pilgrimage experience. I learned some lessons along the way, which had nothing to do with meeting other people. I came face to face with myself at a couple of points and wasn't happy with what I saw. So pilgrimages work at many different levels, which was my takeaway from my own experience.
And what were some of the things that you learned about yourself?
Well, yeah, my wife is sick of hearing this story. It's not quite as dramatic to her anymore. But on the very first night, uh, I set out too soon. I should have taken a rest day after flying across the Atlantic. But I set out the very first day and I went straight up the Pyrenees, which is nearly 5,000 feet in elevation. And it was 16 miles. It was way too much. So
Mm.
the first day was way too challenging. And the sun was going down, and I still had 3 or 4 miles to go before I reached my destination, the place where I planned to stay that night. And I had nothing left. I was utterly spent. And very quickly, I had one option left, and that was to roll my sleeping bag out right next to the path. And you should know that I hate camping. I was scared. I had never done anything like that. I think now people say, well, cowboy camping is something people love to do. And
Mm.
well, to me, it was one of the most harrowing nights of my life. So here was my takeaway. I didn't get this right away, but I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. I can't do everything I imagine myself doing. Sometimes my plans or dreams are far too ambitious, and then I suffer the consequences. And I did that very first night. So when the sun came up, I was relieved to have survived the night. But I was going to say sobered young man. I was a sobered old man who kept going.
Well, yeah, and I think you also learned though that you can do things that perhaps you didn't know you could do.
I guess that would be the positive side too.
That's the
Yes.
positive side. There we go. Now, what would you advise people for doing solo travel? What would if people thought about doing that on their own, what would they need to put their mindset in to get the most out of that?
As it turned out, everyone I met had a different motivation for walking. This past October, I walked the Portuguese portion of the Camino, and I met a mother and daughter who were carrying ashes from husband and father. And their plan before they set out was to scatter his ashes along the way. I didn't witness it, but I caught up with them now and then, and I knew that's what they were doing. So that was their motivation. I met another man who lost his job and his marriage for that matter, to alcohol. And he was out there with his father trying to put his life back together to think through where he was going. And as it turns out, every single person had a different story, a different motivation. And I was going to say it's fun to hear those stories. It's not really fun, but very important to understand why people set out. And then I would say to people who are considering this, think about your motivation.
Right. And that actually ties in very well with my other guest that I'm having as part of this series on tourism, Chad Scott, and he talks about dark tourism. And what dark tourism is where you focus on visiting locations associated with death, tragedy, disaster, places, say like Auschwitz or going to Hiroshima, but even such things as, say, going to the beaches of Normandy or even Arlington National Cemetery. And part of it, though, there is the sensationalism of going to see these places, like going to the Paris catacombs and seeing all these, skeletons. But there's also healing to take away from going to these places as well as a means of personal healing to, it sounds so counterintuitive though, but that, looking at the tragedy of others to help get understanding of tragedy that you may be experiencing. And in that way, I kind of, and I don't know if I coined the term, but I call it light tourism, where you're getting an experience that is going to enlighten you somehow. And in my research on dark tourism, they talk about how this isn't actually a new phenomenon because people have been doing this. Specifically, they talk about like with pilgrimages, where you're going to the site of a dead potential saint, sites of, former battles, things like that. So where would you see this, healing coming from by visiting or doing these pilgrimages?
I had never heard that term before, and I think it's perfect. I mean, I think I'll adopt it for myself. I have a chapter in my book about prisons, and there's an epigraph at the beginning of the chapter from Nelson Mandela, who says you can know a lot about a country by visiting its prisons. Well, I mean, why would anybody go to another country and visit a prison? Well, I've done that, and so there's a chapter about the prisons I visited, and there's a description there about why I ended up doing that. But I went to South Africa and I went to Robben Island, and I saw the jail cell where Nelson Mandela spent 18 years of his life. Now, why would someone want to do that? Well, it turns out that the prison on Robben Island is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. There's a story to be told there about South Africa's history. It's not inspiring in the usual sense of that word, but it's revealing. I'll give you one other. In my time in The Hague, I pedaled by a prison that was across the street, basically across the street from the International Criminal Court. And there's a long history associated with that prison. Right now, these, uh, uh, well, the people who are tried at the International Criminal Court are kept or imprisoned at this particular prison. And I met one of the judges on the International Criminal Court who gave me a tour. I thought this was a very important place for me to visit in order to understand European history, and in particular the history of the Netherlands as it moved through World War II. But prisons don't show up on your typical travel itinerary, and
Hmm.
I'm here to say, why not?
Yeah, yeah, I agree that there, that quote you said from Nelson Mandela about how we can, learn a lot about a culture from visiting their prisons. It shows how we treat, what's the sort of humanity behind incarceration. Now, back to this idea of pilgrimages, though. So a lot
Yes.
of you go on these pilgrimages, obviously for, a religious enlightenment. But what are some of the other takeaways that you have? Like, what is the purpose of going to possibly, as I said, like sites where saints had either been, they could have been
Uh,
tortured, killed, those sorts of things. What are people looking for by visiting those sites?
well, here's another example: the Western Wall in Jerusalem, the only remaining part of the Second Temple.
Is that the
Uh,
Wailing Wall? Is that what they call the
Yeah,
Wailing Wall?
often known as the Wailing Wall, yes.
Okay.
Well, Christians, Muslims, maybe others too, visit this interesting place. It's a ruin, and it's nothing more than a memory of a temple that once stood there, and then, of course, the Romans took most of it down, block by block. So why would you go to a place like that? Well, people go to pray and remember and think about who they are in this long history dating back to and before the Roman Empire. I'm trying to think. Oh, I can give you another good example of this. It might fit in the category of dark tourism. Along the Camino Francis, the path I walked, there's something called the Iron Cross, the Crucifero. And pilgrims for hundreds of years, now close to 1,000 years, have been leaving a stone
Hmm.
at this iron cross. But religious pilgrims, non-religious, everybody does this ritual. So at the foot of this cross, people leave a stone, and now there's just a tremendous mound of stones that have pilgrims have left over the centuries. And the idea is that you leave your burden at the foot of the cross. There's usually some silent meditation, and then people continue with their walk. Well, I was surprised to see so many of my fellow walkers participate in this ritual. I mean, most of them said, "I'm not religious. This is not. I'm not Catholic," and yet they found deep meaning in participating in this ritual. I still think about that, about how universal this need is. Uh, yeah, I would say to find a spiritual dimension to life.
Mm, And so, as a pastor speaking to your flock,
Right.
what would you, impart on them to go out and, experience travel to accomplish with their travel?
you know, um, Most of the amazing things that have happened as a result of travel have been serendipitous. They were unexpected. You couldn't possibly have planned for them. So I typically encourage people to be open to the experience. If you feel lost, good. If you get sick, well, that's not so good. But there is even something to be learned in being sick in another country. The times when we feel disoriented and alone, those are times where the potential is great for learning something. So my orientation to people who travel, especially those who go on pilgrimages, is to maintain this openness along the way. I mean, whatever happens, we're going to learn something. Is my mantra.
Right. Be open to the experience. You may not even be looking for an experience or enlightenment, but just keep an open mind.
Exactly. And I'd go one step further. I would. The church I served in Zurich, Switzerland, was in the old city, so there were lots of tour buses going by, and American faces would be pressed against the windows, and I would feel like a zoo animal. They'd be looking at me on the street and wondering what I would do. So my counsel to people who go on trips is to get off the bus, engage with the people, talk to them, and I mean, you can't go up to random people on the street, I suppose, but there are opportunities to learn from the people we meet. But you have to get off the bus.
All right. So, Doug, as we near the end here of our conversation, at the beginning, I mentioned you are about to embark on a book tour, and this would be an ongoing part of a series of a book tour. So, obviously, there's travel involved in that. How do you feel about traveling on your book tour? Do you look at it as an exciting opportunity, or is it really just now, kind of becomes work?
There are a lot of ugly parts of travel. I will be the first person to admit. I went to Seattle last weekend to see a younger daughter and her family. It's exhausting to fly. The hassle, getting to the airport gate and then getting to your car again. But it's the being with family that makes it worthwhile. So tomorrow I'm leaving for Pennsylvania, and I don't look forward to the car travel. I'm going to listen to some of your podcasts along the way, and then what's going to make it worthwhile are the people I see when I get there. My motivation is to reconnect with some people I care about deeply. And then as soon as I see them, I'm going to forget the 9 hours I spent in the car. Yeah,
And what
the relationships.
the relationships, and what do you experience when you're out promoting your book?
You know, I Here's one thing I find when I talk about the book or do a reading. People often respond by wanting to talk about their own travel experiences, and I sort of anticipated that, but now it's been confirmed. I'll talk about having gone to Spain, and they say, "Well, I went to Spain, and this is what I saw," and I think it's wonderful. I mean, uh, we can share that experience together. People are very proud. People are very proud of how much traveling they've done, and they can't wait to tell others about it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think, as you say, that shared experience again, can bring people together for sure. Now,
Yeah.
on that, as a final takeaway, what is one sort of piece of advice, piece of inspiration you can give my listeners for their next travel experience?
I don't think I've ever been asked that particular question before. So I'm going to come back, I think, to what we said just a couple of minutes ago, and that is check your openness to something new, right? If you think you're going with your mind wide open, try even harder. And then, try to engage people you don't know, people who are from different cultures, and try to see the world through their eyes. That's my best bit of advice.
Well, that's a terrific way to end. Doug, I'd really like to thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. I wish you a lot of luck with the promotion of your new book.
Thank you, Graham. It's so good to meet you.
Hum drummity, hum drummity, hum drummity.
Oh, hey, Kerry. Thank you for taking the time to join me on the show today.
So excited to be here, Graham.
Now, you have given yourself the moniker of Miss World Traveler. Where did that name come from?
Well, it is self-proclaimed, but I feel like I've earned it from having been to over 135 countries, all 50 states, 6 continents out of the 7. But it's also kind of an homage to my background in pageantry. I started in pageantry over 40 years ago. And so the Ms. World Traveler, it's a title. I'm wearing a sash. And it's a bit of a shtick, but it just kind of works.
So when you say pageantry, you're talking obviously about beauty pageants.
Yes, though we typically don't call it beauty pageants anymore. But
Am I dating
yeah,
myself?
well, it's just about so much more that term has become a little bit passé. But those of us who are in it, we call it pageantry.
So with my previous guest, we were talking about travel. He found a lot of meaning by doing solo travel. Now, you, as Miss World Traveler, specialize in solo travel. What was the catalyst for your first solo trip? And was it a specific event, a dream, or something else?
I started traveling when I was pretty young, mostly with my mom. My first overseas trip was in 1984 as kind of a college graduation present. And so I went with my mom and then fell in love. And for the next 10 years, we traveled a lot together. But by then, I'm in my 30s and I'm thinking, I'm feeling a little feisty and I want to do things on my own, want to pick where we go and do what I want, that kind of thing. And I was sort of more financially ready to be able to do that. So that was sort of the kickoff. I'd already been traveling for 10 years, so I didn't feel like I was a newbie, but I was ready to branch out and do it on my own.
Yeah. And so, as a woman traveling on her own during the 90s, how did you feel about that? Did you have concerns?
I didn't, again, because I had been traveling quite a bit, but also at that time, we didn't really have internet and you couldn't do a lot of things on your own. So you had to do everything through travel agencies. I did a lot of tour groups, that sort of thing. So I never felt like I was completely out there by myself. I felt somewhat supported. But even when you think about now, it's so much easier to travel by yourself. You don't have to read a map. You can actually just have, your phone tell you where to go. You don't have to learn the language before you go. Your phone just tells you the translation. So it was almost like it was a good learning experience to do it the hard way. And now it's easy.
Now, do you think maybe we're missing something by the ease of having our phones, you know, tell us to go left, go right, walk, this distance, as opposed to learning how to read a map or being much more independent and not, relying on technology to help us navigate the world?
I think in a way, yes. I mean, I love all of the extra things that make it easy, but there's something about, for me, seeing the map to be able to like photograph it in my head so that I know where I am. So, for example, I was recently in New York and was using the subway. and they didn't have any subway maps because everybody does it on their phone. So I actually had to spend some time to go find a place where I could get a subway map so that I could see the whole thing. And again, just sort of, where am I going, and get that visual of what does the whole thing look like. So I kind of miss that, but I understand, but yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I think those teach you, like map reading is probably a skill that has disappeared for younger generations.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you become very dependent. And when I do that too, when I'm listening, if I'm driving and I'm listening to Siri tell me turn right, turn left, I don't know where I am because I haven't had to look at street signs. I've been watching, okay, 3 more blocks, for that. I haven't done it myself and gotten it in my head to where it's sort of a memory thing.
Mm.
It's just being told what to do. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both, I think.
Yeah, yeah. One thing I like to do if I'm walking somewhere that I haven't been before and I need to come back, what I do is I actually turn around and look where I came because the view is going to be completely different than the view you took in the direction you're going. So you don't have those visual clues coming back because you're like, well, this doesn't look right. Well, of course it doesn't look right. It's the complete opposite of what you saw on the way there.
Love that. That's a great idea. I haven't really done that, but that's a great idea. I try to do landmarks.
Mm.
Okay. I look up and say, okay, well, that's on my left. It's going to be on my right next time.
Yeah, yeah. I also suffer from a terrible sense of direction. If I'm like got a 50-50 chance, like, okay, did I come that way or that way? I'm pretty much guaranteed I'm going to go the wrong way.
Now, are you, they say men aren't willing to ask for directions. Are you willing?
I am, but sometimes, my pride does get in the way, and I'm like, no, I'm sure that we came. Fortunately, my wife and son actually have good sense of direction, so I will acquiesce to them most of the time, not all of the time. So, what is it about solo travel that appeals to you more than traveling with others? And obviously you said you go into these travel groups, but to embark on the travel years ago, so now you mostly go by yourself, and what is the appeal of that to you?
Okay, well, there's several questions in there, so I'll try and answer them all if I remember. What I do now, if I'm going to a place where I don't feel comfortable being by myself, I hire a private guide. So I'm still traveling by myself, but I have help. Like some places, like for example, China, where you can't read the signs, so you truly don't know where you are. I hired a guide for that. So that makes sense. Otherwise, what I love about it is figuring it out on my own. Where am I going? What am I doing? I do a lot of research before I go. And I truly have to when I'm working on one of our shows because our time is limited and I really have to hit the ground running. But it's a good principle, no matter what you are going for, is to research before you go so that you've got an idea. What kind of food? What kind of activities? Where do I want to go? What do I want to do? Everyone's time is limited, right? Unless you are just leaving your life and going for an undetermined period of time. Most people have a week or 2 weeks or 3 days. And so doing that research before you go, figuring it out so that you hit the ground running, that is very helpful. And then once I get there, then I feel like I have enough confidence to put in flexibility. Decided I don't want to do that after all. I want to do this instead. I can because I've done enough research and I sort of have an idea of what's going on.
Right. And so do you also feel perhaps that you get some freedom to do what you want? You're not having to travel with a friend and they're like, well, I want to go over there. And you're like, well, I want to go over there. You can decide what it is you want to see and where you want to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And frankly, a couple times I have met friends, different places, and I end up making it all about them. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And then we do that. So when it's just for me, that's when I'm by myself.
Now, with your planning of your solo trips, are you a meticulous planner or do you like to leave some of it up to spontaneity?
Uh, a little both. Planning meaning I've never been this, and I don't think I ever will be well, I'll just, when I get there, I'll figure out what hotel I want to stay in. No, hotels are all booked, flights are booked. The structure is in place of where I'm going and what I'm doing. Once I get there, then there's full flexibility in terms of what do I want to do while I'm there. I might have a list of, like if you're going to go to Paris, you got to see the Eiffel Tower. Please don't miss it, right? It's on the list, but I could do it today or tomorrow or the next day or, so there's flexibility and freedom involved, but you know that there are some things that you really want to do.
Mm-hmm. Now that brings up an interesting question. A few years ago, we went to Paris and we went and saw the Eiffel Tower, and we were with our son. And he really wanted to go up the Eiffel Tower. But there was a huge lineup to get up there. And also, it's gotten so ridiculously expensive to go up there. And my point was, well, you don't necessarily need to go up the Eiffel Tower to appreciate. It's more about seeing the Eiffel Tower as a structure than it is to climb the stairs or get to the top.
Yes, I totally agree. And that's sort of that question. Is it important enough to you to spend the time to do it? And there are some things that you might say, well, I want to see the Sistine Chapel and the line is 4 hours long. Okay. Are we willing on our 3 days here to spend that time to do it? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And I think each person has to determine that themselves. So for example, went to Egypt, and this was in the 90s. It was a long time ago, but I'm kind of claustrophobic, very claustrophobic. And you could go into the pyramids, but it was like a tunnel and you had to bend down and it was dark and it was, a person in front of you and a person behind you, and I didn't need to do that. I saw the pyramids. So I was there. I didn't need that experience of being in the dark tunnel, crowded tunnel. So I think, each person has to decide, do I want to spend the time? Do I want to spend the money? Is it worth it to me? Or is this enough?
As a solo traveler, and particularly as a female solo traveler, what are some of the, practical safety and precautions you take when you are traveling?
It's all the same things that you do anywhere. To always be aware of your surroundings, to not flaunt, take out your cash, or wear big jewelry, or things that just make you a target. Always keeping a hand on your purse, or maybe the type of purse that it's hard for somebody to get. Just all of the same safety things. But I think more importantly for me is for women who are nervous about it, I say, let's identify why you're nervous. What is your fear? Is your fear of your safety? Is it a fear of being alone? Is it a fear of not being able to afford it? Is it a fear of when I get there, I'll be lonely? Figuring out what keeps you from being able to go, and then see if you can address that particular thing.
Right. Now, on your travels, have you found yourself in any precarious situations? Do you have any stories about sort of the most dangerous encounters you've had?
Well, a dangerous encounter isn't coming to mind, but a precarious one is. So I'll tell you that story. This was in Israel. And Israel, this was a number of years ago, they are world known for how intense their airport security is. And so I had gotten off of a tour early because I had to catch a flight. And it just so happened that I had used miles to go. So I had a ticket, but it was like a free ticket. So I get off the tour, take my luggage in, and security stopped me. And what are you doing? And apparently they didn't like that my ticket didn't show any money on it and that sort of thing. So pretty soon I found myself surrounded by guys with machine guns, and they'd separated my luggage from me. And now I'm nervous, like, don't touch my luggage. I don't have anything to hide, but please don't touch it. It was a 45-minute police interrogation.
Wow.
It had me, and then they would bring separate people in to talk to me to see if I answered questions the same way, that sort of thing. I mean, it was quite a thing. It was hours to calm down after that. And of course, there was nothing, but they saw an inconsistency and just had to figure it out.
Right. Yeah. And I always make a point, also make sure you never ask for a balm, particularly a lip balm, when you're in the airport. Now, when you travel, how do you meet new people and make connections while you're on your own?
Well, I think that's something that you can do as much of or as little of as you want to. Certainly, traveling as Ms. World Traveler, I am seeking out people to interview. I'm looking for, specifically for shops, and I try to do women entrepreneurs and artists and designers, men as well, but I'm seeking out women to do. And so we have an immediate connection just because of what I'm doing and what they're doing, and it's going to be kind of a cross promotion sort of a thing. But just being friendly. If you want to talk to someone, start up a conversation with the person sitting next to you on the plane. And then you never know when you get there, oh, well, let's have dinner together or let's go do this together. You can have as much or as little as you want. And I have some times where I'm not in the mood and I don't speak a word to the person next to me on the plane. Other times we talk the whole way. So it just sort of depends on what you want, what you're feeling, if it seems like it's a good idea.
Right. And I think perhaps that's sort of a misunderstanding of this idea of solo travel. There's a misconception that you're going on your own and you want to be in some sort of isolation.
Right. It's not at all. Again, go to a restaurant, strike up a conversation with the people at the table next to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they're locals, they'll tell you some things to do, where to go, what to do. Okay, well, and what do you suggest? Maybe they go with you. Really, you're in control of that. You can be with people or without people as much as you want.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned something that when you travel, you're obviously looking for people to talk with for your show. So this is a perfect segue for you to tell my listeners about your show and what it is, the content you are looking to provide on that show.
Sure. Well, Ms. World Traveler is a YouTube series where our mission is to inspire women to travel, even if they have to go by themselves. And so we also promote and then shop local. So we promote women artists, designers, entrepreneurs, but we've expanded our content now to really anything stylish, anything interesting, anything cultural. The idea being there are lots of ways to sort of get that fulfillment of something stylish, something interesting. Graham, there's a million travel blogs and, all kinds of websites and different things out there. And so we didn't want to do exactly the same thing as everyone else is doing. So I typically don't ever tell you where to eat or where to stay, that sort of thing. We're really trying to do a little bit more feminine, shopping, glamour, style, that sort of thing. Not that it doesn't appeal to men, but our market is women. And it's not luxury travel. We're not staying at 5-star hotels and things like that. It's for everybody, every budget, everyday, regular people, but just who maybe, bungee jumping off a cliff is not their idea of a good time. Well, that's okay. There's travel for you too.
Now, how has solo travel changed your perspective on the world and your place in it?
It makes it so big, but so small at the same time. And what I mean by that is when you look around, you go to someplace and you see people that have the same desires that we do. They want to have families. They want to raise their children. They want to have a good life. They want to make a good living. They want to have friends. They want to worship. They want to do all of the things that we want to do. So that to me is what makes it small. But also when you go places and you see how other people live, it makes me so much appreciate what I have at home. It can become a national pastime to be a complainer, complaining about politics and about prices and about gas and about all these things. But when you go other places and you see in comparison to how other people live, we're so blessed. And it's so wonderful to be American that it really truly makes me grateful for what I have.
Yeah, you definitely get that perspective of what they refer to as first world problems, which is a majority of what people like to complain about, right?
Yeah.
Now, we briefly touched on this, but how has solo travel influenced your career, your relationships, or, your life path? Did it, change things in any unexpected ways?
Well, Ms. World Traveler is a late in life venture. I've been in pageantry for many, many years, had my own business, have done a number of different things, had a fashion line, just lots of different things. So this doing travel for a living is new in the last 3 years. It's sort of my, final chapter. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. So in a way, it's kind of like the conglomeration, the summarization of everything that I have done in my life and career and the things that I love. And now I've been able to, turn it into something that, okay, I call a business, but it is for me. It's a passion. And that's, you were talking about humdrumity. To me, how you get over that is to live your passion. Do what you love, do what you're passionate about. Don't wait. Don't say, someday I'm going to go here or I'm going to do that. Do it now as much as is possible. And so yes, that is how it has changed my life, is that I just decided I'm just going to go, I'm just going to do it.
Now, I just want to go back into your history here. And I was reading on your website about some of your past, but I would like you to tell me what influence your grandmother had on your love of independence and solo travel.
Yes. My mom's mom, she had my mom, back around the Depression era time, and women were not that independent, but her husband, my grandpa, was off at the war. And then after the war, he was a heavy equipment operator. And so he had to travel for work. He had to leave home. And so she would just pile my mom and my mom's brother, pile the kids in the car and just go, just take off. And so she had this very independent spirit. And I think my mom got that and she passed that on to me. So I'm very grateful that I come from a line of women who, were sort of fearless in terms of being independent and traveling on their own.
Right. So it's almost kind of this love of travel is almost hereditary.
Yes. Yeah. I think there's a bit of a wanderlust and a desire to learn. For me, travel is a continuing education. Always learn something. You go somewhere new and you're always learning about something, about history or about culture, about people and how they live. You're seeing something different. And so you're learning from your experiences. So I love that continuing education part of it.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to tell us about your travels and give us some great advice on solo traveling. And I wish you a lot of success with your endeavors.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Graham.
Okay,
Thanks for having
take care. Thanks for listening to the end. Please look for Doug's latest book, The Traveler's Path: Finding Growth and Inspiration Through Travel, available for purchase on Amazon and other online retailers. Also, check out Kerry's video series by searching Miss World Traveler on YouTube. As always, be sure to like and comment on this or any Humdrumity episode, and don't forget to subscribe to the show. Until next time, take care.